p.m.
Allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, who's up?
Well, I will kick this off, but I know you're all probably wondering, we did just have a major fire event in the city, and the latest information from the fire chief is that the fire is contained to CVS. 7 units total are affected with smoke. It was a completely defensive attack, so that means no firefighters had to enter the building, and CVS is deemed a total loss. Very unfortunate, but we're glad everyone's safe. We have no injuries reported, so that's good. So to kick off tonight, this is the first of 5 budget sessions. As we mentioned a few weeks back, we are pacing with your finance committee, and they have already received most of this presentation, and we're bringing forward the information to you as well as some feedback that we had received from them. While your PowerPoint is 57 slides and full of detail, Devin tonight will be staying rather high level because we're really seeking direction from you on approach. And the reason for giving you so much detail was 2-part. One is that I'm not sure this commission has ever seen a complete capital program pulled together from every single study you've ever done. I've heard a lot from the community and you all, we've done all these studies, but what are we doing with them? And so Camden Mills, our public service director, pulled together all of those documents into one place so you could see, as I like to call it, what does it cost to run a city in one big picture just from a capital perspective. Again, tonight our focus is on capital and other policy level decisions that we'd like your direction and support on as we move through the budget process. So with that, I'm going to kick it off to Devin. She is going to try to approach this in a way that you should interrupt her. I know usually I ask you allow staff to finish the presentation. This one is quite lengthy, so we'd like it to be more interactive and ask her questions and have her stop at a slide if you would like to take that approach. And certainly you can hold all your questions to the end as well, but just wanted you to know she's expecting to be interrupted. So with that, Devin, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Francis. Mayor Commission, Devin Schmidt, Finance Director for the City of St. Pete Beach. As Francis mentioned, this workshop is really the beginning of our budget discussions for fiscal year 2026. So we're going to work on focusing on our historical financial data, our reserve analysis. I'll take you through an initial capital improvement plan presentation, as well as the committee recommendation from the Finance Budget Review Committee. We will be looking for a policy direction for staff to proceed with utilizing the presented capital category prioritization in preparation for the recommended capital budget for fiscal year 2026. So kicking us off with the historical financial overview, I think it's important for us to note that forecasting the 2026 presents several challenges for us that we must really navigate carefully. The impacts of the hurricane on property tax and parking revenues, uncertainties regarding the FEMA reimbursements and the time frame of those, any tariff impacts that are factors that complicate our financial outlook. Additionally, the general fund subsidies to the enterprise fund raises concerns around best practices and financial management. And so addressing these challenges will be critical as we navigate through our financial planning processes. The good news is, though, as we're looking forward, we will be looking to implement some strategic long-term considerations. Of those would be to look at the fee and impact study. This will review all of the enterprise fund revenues, a 10-year financial forecast, which really provides the city to plan for the future year capital and understand our ongoing operational needs and growth. Reserve policies, this is really critical and will be brought back to the commission with staff recommendation, but each fund should really have a reserve policy that has an emergency reserve as well as additional funds for any high priority capital projects. You will see in the 26 budget process that we are working on implementation of best budget practices that are in line with the Government Finance Officers Association. And we will be looking, part of the revenue diversification strategies is looking at some of those fee studies, anywhere we have grant opportunities, and we'll talk a little bit about that tonight, but the intent again is to stay at high level. And then of course the strategic plan alignment is really critical for our financial considerations. The strategic plan helps us outline what the community needs are, what the commission's priorities are, and how the staff can carry out those initiatives and goals throughout the budget process as well. So this is a very high level view of our ad valorem taxable values. Pinellas County provides this valuable insight into our revenue source. And this pie chart really illustrates the distribution of property taxes, highlighting the significance of single family homes and condominiums in our tax base. Understanding this distribution is really critical for our effective financial planning and resource allocation in our community. And in the future workshop, we'll be sharing out about how many of these properties are homestead versus not, as we're working through some of those processes. So just wanted to provide that of the commission. This slide represents a detailed overview of our general fund revenues exceeding everything over $100,000. So the table highlights revenues from various sources from prior years, and this allows us to identify and make informed decisions about trend analysis. By analyzing these figures, we're able to better understand our financial landscape and prioritize the funding around essential services. I think it is important to note that many of these revenues, we do not have the opportunity for local control or changes. Many of those are at the county or state level. So just wanted to provide what those highest level revenue sources are as we're looking at our general fund, ad valorem taxes, parking facilities, the county EMS reimbursement, and then all of those utility tax fees that we receive. Sales tax for the city of St. Pete Beach is a smaller portion of our overall revenue source. So just wanted to provide that information. You might see in this 2025 year-to-date column, this is what we have received to date in each one of these revenue streams. There will be administration fee transfers occurring later on in the fiscal year, but you can see just how we're trending to date on some of these revenues. So moving on, just some opportunities for revenue diversifications, which is really vital for enhancing our financial sustainability. Some areas would include a potential bed tax for beach maintenance if we were able to collect that from Pinellas County. Grant opportunities, of course, are something that the city is currently exploring with by way of some of the management analyst positions that have been added to the city. Our fee and impact studies, so that's looking at what is the fees and the impacts that we're currently generating in our enterprise funds and how are those sustaining. And then any other fees as we're thinking about maybe parks and recreation programs or things of that nature would be important for us to take a look at and review. So this is very much an educational slide. I think it's important for the commission and the community to understand the distinction between the general fund and our proprietary funds or our enterprise funds. It's really for effective financial management. The proprietary funds that we currently have at the City of St. Pete Beach include wastewater, reclaimed water, and stormwater multimodal. The general fund has been subsidizing these funds, and best practice says that these funds operate much more like a business enterprise, where the revenues that are coming in are able to exceed the expenditures going out, and that general fund subsidy is not a best practice. They should be self-sustaining. So I just wanted to take a moment to provide that education and provide the commission with that understanding. So some of the opportunities and trends as we're looking at this fiscal year 26, we will be looking to achieve a budget accuracy of 96%. And what that is doing is it's showing that our actuals are 96% of our budget. And this would mean that we're closely aligning our budgeted figures and what we had planned to achieve with our actual expenditures. I spoke a little bit about the reserve policies, but it's really critical for us to set aside savings for future projects, emergencies like we incurred this year with Helene and Milton. And then in addition, those reserve policies should have that any unspent funds may be transferred to a capital project, provided the reserve policies are adhered to first. And as we navigate into the following slides, the data is really reflective of where we have opportunities for improvement in our budgeting practices. So I'm going to move rather quickly through this next section. Again, as Francis mentioned, please feel free to stop me as you have questions. So this is the year-over-year comparison in our general fund. This provides us some insights into our financial performance. The commission can see that the figures for revenues and expenditures and the net amounts highlight our fiscal health. But you can see in here that the general fund is and has been building reserves. The long-term goal would be for the city to have better policies that are around the reserve funding. And you can see the differences between the budget and the actuals and the delta that we had planned for versus what we had actually spent. So that's where that 96% really is critical for the city to get to, so that we're able to really shore up those actuals with our revenues. As we're looking at the wastewater fund, this fund plays a critical role in maintaining our city's infrastructure. But you can see here that what we had planned to budget versus what actually was spent is very different. And so as we move forward in 2026, the commission and the community will see a much closer alignment between those variances. You might wonder why there's such a large variance in revenue from 2023 to 2024. That would have to do with the general fund subsidy. So under the current rate structure, there's just not enough funding to cover those capital expenditures, and we'll get into that detail in some of the later slides. Looking at the reclaimed water system, this is utilized for sustainable water use in our community. The commission can see here that with our budgetary actuals and revenues, while they are closer aligned to getting towards that 96%, we are not taking in enough revenues to even cover operations without a general fund subsidy under the current fee structure that we have in those funds. Stormwater, so that's vital for managing our water quality and preventing flooding in our community. This fund generates approximately $500,000 for capital projects. However, the commission will see in later slides that the needs of capital are greater than that $700,000. And again, really working towards getting those budget to actuals closer aligned at the end of the year. In our building fund, the building fund is really responsible for ensuring that public safety and quality of life through enforcement of our building codes. What we're looking at here, the past 2 years of actuals have contributed to the fund balance. I think it's important to note that waiving of the permit fees did result in about $3 million of uncollected revenues for the fund, so I wouldn't expect to see that in 2025. Moving on to our fleet fund. The fleet fund is essential for managing our vehicle replacements within the city. The fund is really to ensure that we're effectively planning for future vehicle use. And so I'm going to keep moving on that one. In a resiliency fund, so this was an initiative that was created in 2023. This slide outlines the fund's purpose. As you can see that here we are showing that we are not increasing any revenues as we are moving forward. And so going back to what that comprehensive plan will be a priority for us in 2026 as we create that budget. The multimodal fund focuses on our impact fee related activities for support new development. Again, the commission can see that with our budgetary practices, we were budgeting to go into a net negative or into the fund, dip into that fund balance for the fund. And again, the revenues and budgetary actuals need to closer align in our future years. So I know this is a very long list here of 2023 capital projects. What I really want the commission to understand from this slide is that this is another area for improvement in our budgeting practices. So for our projects for the fiscal year of 2023, we budgeted $22 million in capital projects, only completing 4.8 million. The goal in future fiscal years would be that we are budgeting for what we anticipate to start or complete in that year. And this is the same type of situation. We have a little bit closer of a delta between the budget and the actuals, but 25 million compared to 7.1 million in actuals. So again, we'll continue to look to address these priorities. Diving into our reserve analysis, some of the considerations as we're thinking about the reserve is some of our factors just affecting our financial resources. So the city will be looking to go for an emergency bridge loan that could backfill operations. The FEMA timing of reimbursements is challenging in that we don't know if it's going to be 5 years, 7 years, when we'll receive those reimbursements for some of those projects. The initial cost of the hurricane response obviously was very expensive and created a large expense in our general fund. And then again, those lack of reserve policies and an investment policy are all pieces and parts as we're looking at some of this information. So what this slide is showing here is a comprehensive budget comparison by fund for the fiscal impacts of 2025 through 2026. And so the detailed table is outlining our funding sources and our expenditures. But it's important to note that the highlighted beginning fund balances is unaudited and subject to change. You'll see that I have some arrows listed out here where we may have some opportunities for FEMA reimbursement. Within our wastewater fund, we are expecting a reimbursement on Pump Station 1. And then any areas where we could utilize that emergency bridge loan to backfill some of our operational costs. I think it's important to note that for Helene, our contracts totaled 7.3 million with 6.2 million in expenditures. Contracts for Milton emergency expenditures was 2.7 in contracts and 761,000 to date. Off to the right, you'll see that some of those expenditures were utilized for debris collection, remediation of buildings. The two that I have highlighted in orange, I think it's important for the commission to understand that the general fund did pay for any pump station repairs and Pump Station 1 as far as those initial costs. So typically financial best practice would be for those to come out of the wastewater fund. So just a point of note for you all. Okay, so as we're moving through this presentation, now we're looking at the initial 5-year capital improvement plan. So the team, as Francis has mentioned, really went through and documented to address every need in the city, including work needed from all the studies to provide a comprehensive overview of what does it cost for us to run a city. So what we're going to be looking at as we move through some of these is some very large dollar amounts. So I think it's important just to lead with that note for you all, and what we'll be asking for is the policy direction from the commission to help us further reduce down some of these projects as we have to put forward a balanced budget. So I'm going to set the stage here for you before we start looking at each one of these capital projects. But what we're looking at here is prioritization based off of their importance to the community needs. So the way staff looked at prioritizing these projects is storm repair, restore with resiliency, or amenity enhancement. The presentation is going to outline all of the needs, and staff would obviously not recommend for all of these projects to come forward given the funding constraints. Historically, many of these critical infrastructure projects have been off the priority list just due to funding constraints, and the result is a very large list of unfunded capital projects. So for 2026 through 2030, this CIP will provide all the necessary projects to restore the aging infrastructure, includes community amenity enhancements, but the staff recommendation would be that those are delayed due to any priority critical infrastructure projects. So when we're looking at discussing this capital projects format, we wanted to take the approach of looking at it from a fund. So each project will begin with the fund title, which sets the context for the funding source of how these projects are going to be paid for. Following that, we'll have a comprehensive project description. And I think it's important to note that, that all of these will describe the project's objectives and the scope. Followed by that, we'll have the current year budget and then the 5-year budget forecast for that financial roadmap, just ensuring that all the stakeholders really understand both the immediate and the long-term financial needs. Additionally, we'll be categorizing the projects related to storms, highlighting our proactive stance on repair, and then finally, for the funding consideration sections, it's important that this reflects our awareness of all potential projects, including those impacted by damages, previous studies, and ensuring that all of those capital requirements are met effectively. So starting off with our general fund, CIP. So this slide presents our projected revenues for the general fund from 2025 to 2030. The penny for Pinellas in the general fund transfers is the largest source of revenue for these capital projects. The county projects on average a 2.5 increase in that sales tax each year. And so this slide is representing that the interest is growing at that same rate. You'll see that $8 million pushed out to 2030. That is reflective of FEMA reimbursement. Again, not knowing when we're going to receive that, we decided to put that out in some of the future years for consideration. So I'm not going to take the commission through each and every single one of these projects, but we have included the detailed information of each project on the slide. The intent, however, as I mentioned, is not to discuss the merits of the project. Really what we're looking for is for policy direction on the categories that the staff is looking at ranking the projects. But the commission can see here that this initial slide is for our beaches. So looking at anything with dune and beach restoration, dune walkover replacements, and then some foot and shower drainage improvements. This is all of our information technology projects. So this slide is outlining our various IT projects planned for the fiscal year 2025 through 2030 with a focus on enhancing the city's technology infrastructure and improving that operational efficiency. So as we're looking at some of these, we have some camera-wide security systems. We have some applications that will increase our efficiencies for staff with our onboarding processes and some other IT projects as well. So this slide is looking at any of our general fund CIP for parks, highlighting any key improvements planned for the upcoming years. So each one of these projects is designed to either enhance, restore, or restore our current amenity in our parks. And so, for instance, we have the Bella Vista mini park improvement, which would look to address any of our infrastructure. We have the Fishing Piers Rehabilitation Project and the Haran Docks Project, which aims to connect any of those floating docks to a broader waterway trail. Moving into our public.
Just because I know
Yes.
it's going to happen in many of the next slides. On the revenue sources that are blank, why is it that we don't know the source? Like is it just not been determined, or are we hoping for a grant? Like why are those blank?
I apologize. I think some of those, especially looking at the fishing pier rehabilitation, we do have that marked as storm related. So I can follow back up with you on that.
I know it does happen through a lot of the fund So just, I didn't know if it was.
Yeah, and some of it, you'll see the reason when we come back, we will be asking for, if there, when we bring the full general fund operation budget, if there's revenue, excess revenue, that's when we start to send it into the capital project. So it could be, we just haven't decided whether it is grant worthy and we think we could get something, or we're gonna bring general fund money in to pay for it.
Thank you.
Yes. I think that's a good call out too, because obviously you're going to see a lot of these where they're tying back to that penny for Pinellas, and the penny for Pinellas is on average anywhere from 1.5 million onward. And so obviously we do not have enough funding. Anywhere where you see that penny for Pinellas, that is just showcasing where that could be an option for that project, that it fits that half cent or that sales tax language. Okay, so looking at some of our public services project, these are really key initiatives aimed at enhancing or restoring our community resiliency and infrastructure. You can see these projects are from 2025 through 2030, including some significant seawall replacement, some improvements to City Hall, notably the 36th Street Avenue seawall replacement, the 80th Avenue Living Shore Wall project, and the Boca Ciega neighborhood, as well as the community center seawall replacement.
Could I ask another question on this one? I'm sorry, Mayor, if you know that's slipping because I know we're going fast.
Okay.
When the seawall, because I know these are going to pop up a couple of times, living shoreline seawall replacement and so forth. And when I did the price per linear foot on seawall, they were averaging about 340 a linear foot. And from kind of bidding out a lot recently on linear footage, from a lot of bids I've been receiving for residential, it's been at 750 a linear foot. So just knowing that in my mind, is there a way that we could, I feel like we're going to be very short in some of these capital improvement projects. You know, a lot of the ticket items that come back to commission saying that we need to make an adjustment or an amendment because of cost.
That's a good note. These are, again, these are assessments, and this is staff's first, bite at the apple, I'll say, and as well as you right now. Mm-hmm. And then once we get a good revenue picture, we'll know what to do. But as Devin mentioned earlier in the presentation, the tariffs are a concern. We're watching them closely, and I'm pretty sure all of these numbers are going to change to some extent when we come back with final recommendations as Camden sharpens his pencil on the engineering estimates. But I've heard the same on seawalls, and it's probably going to double in a lot of areas.
Okay. More public services project. These projects detail various initiatives just aimed at restoring and enhancing the city facilities impacted by the hurricanes. This table provides some overview of the projects and the facility building repairs, elevator rehabilitation, emergency backup generators, HVAC improvements, some lighting conversions and roof replacements. Notably, the financial allocations for each of these projects are spanning again from that 25 to 2030 year, highlighting the cities and what we're trying to do with our commitment to resiliency and recovery. And so we do have quite a few projects listed out there as well that are falling within that restore and resiliency category. So notably on this one, we do have the Fire Station 22 that's set for demolition and reconstruction due to the significant hurricane damage, and then bringing that in compliance with the current building codes. We have some facility repairs. We have an investment in some of our mechanical tools and equipment for maintaining our city vehicles and enhancing the operational efficiency. And then we have some seawall repairs highlighting our ongoing commitment again, where we're looking to have restore and resiliency in some of these areas. Sticking with our public services projects, we have the Paso Grill Way seawall replacement. which is crucial for our coastal resiliency, involving some significant engineering measures like steel and sheet piles. Additionally, we have the expansion of the Public Services Operations Yard, shoreline protection improvements, which are pretty crucial as far as our restore and resiliency or repair projects. Moving on to our streets projects, we're still within our general fund 301 projects. This slide is outlining some of the various projects and needs. Notably, we have the Boca Ciega Drive reconstruction, which is crucial due to extensive scope and addressing some of that aging infrastructure, and stormwater improvements at the cost of $7 million. We have bridges rehabilitation program, ensuring that structural integrity of our city and our bridges continue. We have Gulf Boulevard utility undergrounding. And last, we have the Gulf Way rehabilitation project that focuses on some of the recovery from Helene damage, incorporating resiliency measures. Some more streets projects. We have the Gulf Wings Drive reconstruction. We have the hurricane damage right-of-way rehabilitation project, which is looking at some of the impacts of our recent storms, particularly in some of the more vulnerable areas like Paso Grill. We have the right-of-way median improvements. We have some signage, asset management, roadway rehabilitation, of approximately 40 miles of paved roads. And then we have our Shell Alley improvements. And lastly, our Vina Del Mar bridge lighting replacements included in here. So you can see again, we have restore, resiliency, repair. We have some enhancement projects and quite a few resiliency projects. So as the commission can see, that not all of our projects that I previously spoke about can be funded. So with the policy direction that we received from the commission, we will reduce down these projects and present a balanced budget for the policy direction for the commission. But what we're looking at here is our total revenue, our total expenditures, our beginning unaudited fund balance, and then our change in fund balance and our ending fund balance. So obviously we could not bring forward $50.48 million in capital projects for fiscal year 2026. But important to note the needs that we do have in the community. So I'm going to move on to our reclaimed water fund. This slide outlines our financial projections for the reclaimed water fund from 2025 through 2030. This is detailing our various revenue sources, including connection fees, service charges, which are crucial for understanding how the funds will sustain itself. What I would like to highlight here is that we do have a $400,000 general fund transfer that was planned in 2025 to offset some of the capital projects, as well as our operating revenue versus expenditures. The commission can see that we currently are not bringing in enough revenues to sustain our operating expenditures. So that's where that general fund subsidy is coming in, as well as with some of the capital projects that we have. Looking at just a little bit more detail about what those capital projects are in our reclaimed water fund. So the lateral service pipe replacement is looking at addressing some urgent needs we have by replacing our aging infrastructure. We also have the second project, which is our pig port installation, which is focusing on restoring the pig ports necessary for our system maintenance. And funding for these, you'll see listed as reclaimed water and general fund, and they are in the category of resiliency, restore and resiliency. So moving on to our stormwater fund. This slide presents our comprehensive financial overview. The commission can see that the operating expenditures are sufficiently covered by the revenues, but what we're showing is that our capital needs are greater than what we're bringing in on our revenues for stormwater. So I think that's an important call out to see. Looking at some of the various stormwater CIP projects, we have the 45th Avenue drainage improvements, which is focusing on upgrading our stormwater infrastructure, including a new pump station to improve water quality, manage runoff effectively. We have the Bella Vista Baffle Structures project, which is looking at addressing the clogging issues of the tidal check valves. We have the Don Cesar and Boca Chica area resiliency adaptation projects, which is particularly significant in cost, which is looking to mitigate some of the risk associated with sea level rise and flooding. And again, all of these are either stormwater or general fund funded, and we have them in the category of resiliency. Carrying on with our stormwater projects, we have the Don Cesar Outfall Improvement Phase 2. It addresses the last remaining outfall needed for rehabilitation in that neighborhood. Additionally, we have ongoing drainage improvements that will enhance the overall stormwater infrastructure, the cleaning and inspection of stormwater systems, particularly after Hurricane Helene. And lastly, we have the Watershed Management Master Plan, which will replace the existing plan, ensuring that we're prepared for any of the future sea level rise impacts. So we have these within Restore Resiliency, Stormwater General Fund funded. Continuing on with our stormwater projects, we have the Northwest Region analysis, which highlights the significant flood risk, with projections indicating that up to 64% of our intersections could be affected by future funding. We have the Northwest Region Resiliency, which has a plan of seawall upgrades, capacity pump stations, and we have the Pass-a-Grille and Villa Del Mar projects emphasizing our raising seawalls, improving our drainage systems. And lastly, we have an update on the stormwater drainage manual to ensure that our future infrastructure needs are meeting the standards and planning requirements. Categories are resiliency, restore and resiliency, and again, stormwater and general fund. Looking at our wastewater fund, this is looking at the financial overview. As this commission can see, there's not sufficient funding for the capital projects. There is enough funding to cover the ongoing operational projects, but we do have some large capital projects, as you can see here. So taking a look at what some of those key projects are, we have our asset management update, which involves our GIS mapping and regular updates to asset management. We have the focus on the forced main replacements, particularly forced main 17 and 6. We have the forced main 1 replacement, which is significant due to its role in transporting our wastewater to St. Petersburg facilities. Additionally, we have the pump and lift station assessment, emphasizing our importance of those regular evaluations to ensure our infrastructure reliability. So we have these categorized in resiliency, restore and resiliency, as well as wastewater and general fund. We have some pump and lift station overhauls. This is focusing on our necessary repairs to our 45 flight pump assets, ensuring that they remain operational and efficient. Pump station rehabilitation highlights our significant storm damage repairs, emphasizing the needs for our maintenance and to prevent future issues. And additionally, we have the sewer smoke testing initiative, which is vital for identifying our inflow and infiltration problems, which can lead to some costly repairs if not addressed. Our categories here are restore, repair, resiliency, and we have wastewater. We do have a potential FEMA as well as a grant for funding, but primarily wastewater and general fund funded. And this first project on this slide focuses on updating our hydraulic model of the wastewater system, which is essential to our accurate reflecting of current flow data. Second project addresses the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, emphasizing the need for cleaning and inspection of our sewer system to mitigate the sediment buildup. And our third project is looking at the wastewater transmission system, particularly the installation of our air release valves to enhance our pipe longevity. And lastly, we have the forced main assessments to ensure that our maintenance and replacement of planning. So each one of these projects is looking at the category of resiliency, restore, repair, and we have wastewater general fund for the coverages. Again, I think it's really important for the commission and the community to understand that enterprise funds should operate like a business, and they should not require a subsidy. So these are the enterprise funds that the commission will see as we move into our 26 budget, which would be wastewater, stormwater, and reclaimed water. We were looking at taking parking into its own enterprise fund, which often is a revenue generator with no restrictions of those uses of revenues. And another opportunity for just a piece of education is that the services that often do require a subsidy include transportation services. General fund obviously accounts for all the financial resources, except for those that should be accounted for in another fund. And some of the activities, just for understanding, that are typically accounted for in a general fund would be roads, parks and recreation, amenities, and programs like that. So with that, I'm going to take us into what the Finance Budget Review Committee recommended at our meeting last week. And so to complete the fee studies as quickly as possible and look at implementation, approach the capital project prioritization so that failures and restorations are addressed first, and then other projects. And then bring back staff recommendation for projects for committee, advisory recommendation, and commission approval with a balanced budget. So as I mentioned when we kicked off here, this is the first of 5 of our budget workshops. And so our next budget workshop, we will be bringing back an updated capital improvement plan, as well as our position listing and benefits overview on the June 10th meeting. And with that, the action that we're asking for the commission tonight is just policy direction for staff to proceed with utilizing the presented capital category prioritization and preparation for our recommended budget, and more than happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Devin. Okay. Commissioner Marriott.
Yeah, I've got just a couple questions, and thanks, Devin, for putting this together in this format. This is a great way to look at this. And so I guess I want to make sure I'm understanding correctly that in the beginning of the presentation, it talked about the need to get our budgeted figures more in line with actual figures, and how far off they have been in the past. And am I interpreting it correctly that one of the reasons that those numbers are so far off from each other is that we were perhaps budgeting for more than either we were budgeting for more than staff was able to accomplish at the time, or we were planning too big, or we were executing too small, or is that the main issue there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there could be a lot of different factors when we're looking at the differences between those actuals and those budgets. It could be that there was a level of contingency existing in the prior year budgets, that there was unspent funds due to attrition with staffing, or that the capital projects, while we're thinking about that, was too aggressive for what we were able to accomplish in a given year. So there's definitely a lot of different factors that could influence that. I think the biggest piece as we move forward would be for us to look at tightening up some of those expenditures, and for items to be brought forward that the staff won't ask for it unless we intend to accomplish the project. And that will allow for the budget efficiency and utilization to be placed in the best places possible, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you for that. That was I like the method of prioritization that you have set up. I was just going to caution that we take into account what can actually occur in any given year, so that we're not repeating the mistakes of the past of kind of over-promising what we're going to do when we clearly can't execute. Thank you.
Commissioner Mulholland.
Thank you, Devin. Joe Mulholland. Just a quick
It's a pretty small potatoes question compared to a lot of this, but we got to start somewhere. So item 362450, leasing concessions. So far as general fund revenue, do you happen to know, I'm assuming that's not part of the fee study. Would that be accurate? Do you know that? Or Madam City Manager, do you know, would that be part of the fee study?
I don't know. Devin, do you know? I don't know that.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I could certainly follow up on that.
So I would like to know, one, if possible, maybe next time we talk about general fund, if that is part of the fee study. And I'd also like to understand exactly what we have for leases. For example, I know the Paradise Grill, for example, has a lease. I know the Dawn Vista used to have a lease. Mary Pier Bait Shop used to have a lease. But I'm unaware of all the leases in the city, but what I am aware of, in my opinion, the leases, many of them have been way too cheap and haven't really been looked at. And, you know, once again, with the deltas that we have between revenues and needs, this isn't a big item, but I just have always felt that these things never got looked at, and these are the time we need to start chipping away at some of these things to, you know, make sure that we're charging what we should be charging. We're getting ready to spend a barrel of money on a lot of these facilities, and I think we need to know that we're getting an appropriate return on investment, and if we're not getting an appropriate return on investment, then we need to be honest with ourselves and say, well, we're doing it for cultural reasons or for whatever reason we're doing them. So that's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Well, I like the idea of having realistic goals and going forward with those, and definitely prioritizing the repairs first and taking enhancements last. I think that's the way to go for sure. I also see some other possible opportunities for possible other fees that creatively that we might be able to do. A little bit more maybe on the short-term rentals side of things. I do believe there's probably a lot of those going on that are not known. I think people are getting creative ways to get around the system. And I think that deserves a little attention on that, because that, I don't know exactly how much of a moneymaker that is, or to whom, on which side of that could be. But I do know that there's, the fees are somewhat substantial.
It's not much of a moneymaker in the short-term rentals because we're limited to how much we can charge. It's just like with some of the other fees, they're administrative. So the fee that we charge, for example, for registering a property, if we were to require registering the property, it really can't exceed the cost of us administrating that. And then all it does, it just creates more paperwork for our staff. A change in the ordinance when it's already pretty difficult to change that particular ordinance, and we have pretty strong protections in place vis-a-vis some of the other cities. And so I would not be inclined to even take a look at touching that, because it could just really put us in a position where, like Indian Rocks Beach, where they went from having full restrictions to just a free-for-all. And so charging $150 administration fee, for example, might net us whatever in revenue, but that's going to be offset by the staff person we'll have to have maintaining that registry. And since we're not allowed to have any other taxes, any other tax schemes that we implement ourselves, like a bed tax, for example, we can't even charge short-term rentals a separate fee, or the hotel fee, or anything else like that. So I do appreciate the thought. That one's probably not.
I know some other cities are doing things, such as Cleveland, and a few other cities are tackling that issue across the country.
Yeah, they just may not have the same restrictions that we have from the state of Florida. right, where we can't implement our own taxes, and then we also can't charge fees that exceed what it costs to administer the program.
Are we likely to have the results of the fee study in time for this budget, or is that something that's not necessarily going to affect things until next year?
I think realistically, we will have some preliminary data. And again, a budget's a planning document, so it can be changed. So if we feel pretty confident in some of the fees we're getting back, we'll most likely try to present what we're seeing, and then we'll try to adopt the fee schedules along the way. So you kind of anticipate your budget based on a projected adoption of a fee schedule.
Commissioner?
On the categorization, because the recommendation, you had listed recommendation from the committee, repair and, I forgot the other word, that's up there. Repair and resiliency, is it combined? No, repair and?
Restore.
Restore, sorry, yes. Repair and restore, which in theory is a good recommendation when you hear the name of the category. What I want to caution is that if you prioritize only by that and not look at, let's say, resiliency, for example, which is to improve infrastructure so it would be better than what it currently is, right? We're still going to have storms coming, whether they're just regular rainstorms, thunderstorms, whatever it may be, or deteriorating infrastructure that we've been talking about for many, many, many years, doing many, many, many studies. But some of these repairs can be prioritized, but then listed as, do we need it now? Is this something, and I'll use the word Commissioner Mulholland used, that it's cultural versus something that is needed at this minute when there's other repairs, and they're not listed as a repair, they're more resiliency, that are critical infrastructure improvements. So it's almost like combining them both so that, or prioritizing both, so the commission can look at it and say, yes, that repair is necessary because we might have had to demolish it, but do we need to rebuild it this year? If that makes sense.
It does.
Okay. Anything further? City Manager, do you have what you need from us today?
We do. We'll see you back in a month with
Okay, thank you.
more detail.
When is the next budget? No, not our workshop, the
Finance Committee.
Finance Committee, yeah.
Devin, do you know when the next Finance Committee workshop is?
Let me pull that up. Give me 1 second. Oh,
I think on the city website, it says June 4th.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we found it on the website.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
Sorry about that.
thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.